Does it say that it's recording? Okay. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and maybe get started, and we'll just take our time sort of introducing ourselves. More people are coming in here minute by minute, but I think we can go ahead and get started and do introductions. So Layla, do you want to start us off here?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today talking about two of my favorite things, social emotional learning and restorative practices, as well as gardening. I've got all my baby plants outside, getting some nice fresh air. I'm really excited, but then I know we're going to deal with the temperature drop here over the next couple of days, so I need to take care of my babies. I do just want to say that today we're going to be talking about social emotional learning, restorative practices, and school gardens. So I hope you're in the right spot. If you're not in this right spot, I hope you stay with us because it will be really exciting. I did want to just give a little bit of credit to the artist. So I lived in Syracuse, New York for 3 years, and I became really close with the folks that ran the Syracuse Cultural Workers. And every year they put out a peace calendar. And this was the April layout for the peace calendar for this year. And so it was kind of great. We had been planning this presentation. Anna, Michelle, Jeff, and myself were planning this presentation, and I flipped my calendar on April 1st and I saw this beautiful picture. So I immediately texted the founder of the Syracuse Cultural Workers and said, can I please use this artwork in our presentation? And he was really excited to hear that we're connecting this work. And so I did just want to plug that. If you click, once we share out this PowerPoint, if you click on the wording below the picture, that will take you to the Syracuse Cultural website. And so please go check it out. They have a lot of wonderful, wonderful items. Should we maybe go to the next slide and do the about us, and we can each introduce ourselves and then introduce our audience as well, because it's a small enough group that we can all have a chance to talk. So my name is Layla D. Heyman. I'm the Director of School Climate here at APS. As I had mentioned, I lived in Syracuse, New York for a couple of years. The only reason I would go to that very, very snowy area of the country is for grad school. And so I'm working on my PhD in special education and specifically focusing my dissertation on restorative practices in the school to prison pipeline. In my free time, I'm an avid gardener. I love fermenting food. I love baking, cooking, and I really love to get outdoors and just be in nature. Anna, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anna Flores. I am the Behavior Redirector here at Whittier Elementary School. As you can read there, I have 4 children, ages 15, 12, 13, and 8. My husband and I adopted all 4 of our kids, and we have been able to use our home garden as a tool to help them cope with a lot of their trauma. So I'm really excited to be able to share with you what we have done, what I have done at the school level and at home for the kids.
I love that comment. Did you see that, Anna? Hi, I'm Michelle Felicia Renteria. I am the School Climate Coordinator, and I have the beautiful and wonderful opportunity to support behavior redirectors just like Anna in the elementary schools. I just wanted to say a little bit about my son's elementary. Of course, he's now in middle school, but he was very fortunate to go to charter school, William and Josephine Dorn Charter School there on Edith. And they had this amazing community garden. And at the time, Maestra Sylvia was their teacher out there in the garden. So excited to be here.
I am Jeff Newcomer Miller. I'm the Restorative Practice Coordinator at APS. And my connection with gardens is, I've always been around gardens. We grew up with gardens in our family. When I was in high school, I thought I was going to become a professional gardener with a good friend of mine. and he kept up with the business and still has it thriving and doing greens and a bunch of sort of root vegetables. But we moved out here about 10 years ago, and I am still figuring out how to grow soil in New Mexico, grow plants in the soil of New Mexico. So hopefully you guys can all teach me a little bit about that, because maybe I don't have the patience, or maybe I'm just too Midwestern and think things should just grow when you plant them in the soil. So that's my sad story. But the other part of my sad story is that I'm going to lead you in a check-in right now. And so if those of you who are in the world of SEL, or in the world of schools, or in the world of working with human beings at all, it's important for us to just kind of remember who we are and how we are, who we bring to us, this space and this time. And kind of a recognition that this wasn't the only thing you're doing today, that you obviously have had a full day, or you've had lots of other things going on today, or you are more than just this one meeting. And so we want to recognize that. And we're just going to take a little bit of time right now to, I like to move and stretch a little bit, especially when it's like 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the afternoon and it's really, really windy. And I just I get unsettled in that. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of a breathing and stretching exercise. Feel free to turn off your camera if you do not want to do this with other people watching you. I will keep my camera on, so you'll be forced to watch me if you so desire, but you do not have to. So we're going to spend about 3 minutes in breathing and stretching, and then we're going to do kind of a check-in or weather report on that. So for the first just kind of couple seconds, just take some breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. And if you're me or you're like me, just do some stretching. My shoulders are the place I hold all my stress, so I need to roll my shoulders. But find yourself a comfortable spot or stand up if you feel like it. I really love standing up when I'm doing presentations, so that's my thing. But if you're not and you like to sit down, that's great. But just kind of make yourself a little bit longer. Take some deep breaths, and then we'll move into some stretching. So when you are ready, you don't have to do this with me, but if you feel like you want to, go ahead and on your next inhale and stretch up and try to touch the ceiling. Hold that for a little bit and then breathe out. I'm going to go all the way to the ground on this, but if you're sitting down, just bend over as much as you can or feel comfortable and do the same thing. Breathe in on your way down. And hold it. Breathe up on your way up. I'm going to go over to my left. Now on my right. I'm going to do one more up and down, and then we'll do the weather check. So breathe in and out and down. That's the shaking out period of the breathing part. So as you're breathing, inhaling through your nose, exhaling out through your mouth, do a quick weather report. You can unmute yourself or you can post it in the chat. And just sort of say, if you were to describe your weather right now, what would it be like? This is sort of your internal weather report. And I'll read them off as they come in here. Calm after the hurricane, partly cloudy. the wind right now. Partly cloudy and windy. Foggy, but wind coming through to clear the skies. Sun coming through the clouds. Sunny. Some rain and sunshine, anticipating rain, or hoping for it anyway. Windy but sunny. I don't know what that means. I don't know, LOL speech, laughing at, oh, that's good. Oh, yes. All right, so thank you all for indulging in that and sort of doing a kind of a quick check-in, and then we'll keep moving on here.
All right, so I just wanted to go through some of our objectives for today so you know what to expect for the remainder of the time that we have together. So today our main objectives are to really acknowledge the role that nature plays in our own emotional well-being, as well as the students that we come in contact with. We're also going to inform and demonstrate FEL, social emotional learning, and restorative practices. And then we're going to begin to start developing some of those practices that you can incorporate into your either personal gardens or into your school gardens. And then understanding and accepting that gardening can be a tool to help with trauma, anxiety, stress, and so many other things. So really understanding that our schools are incubators for relationship building, as well as spaces for healing. And so in what ways can we utilize other spaces, these external spaces outside of the classroom, to do that work? And so we'll really kind of drive through that and make it very interactive. So we invite all of you to, if you have any questions, to stop us and ask questions, to provide comments. I'll be kind of looking through the chat if anything comes up. Because it is a smaller group, I really do welcome this to be a very interactive experience with y'all. So that is our plan for today.
Okay, so why are we doing this and why is this important for children? So just to give a quick history, in 2016, my husband and I became foster parents to a sibling group from Whittier Elementary School. The three older siblings were in my after-school program. At that time, they were the most neglected case at our school. And CYFD came into the picture, of course, and they needed to be put together because the trauma of the separation from mom was another added case of trauma on top of everything that they had gone through for most of their life. And so it was interesting. Prior to the kids, I had my garden, and gardening for me was a way to decompress. And it was something very private and special to myself. And when the kids came along, I almost didn't want to share it because I still needed a place to decompress. And I felt like if the kids came along, I was going to get more stressed out trying to teach them how to garden and how to be part of it. But it all of a sudden became this natural curiosity of what was happening in now their home, right, in their house and what I was doing. And so I didn't even have to turn it into any kind of on purpose lesson plan or education. It became very organic and natural. They wanted to know what I was doing. They wanted to understand how I was growing this garden and why. So fast forward to 2020. we had, we've already gone through the gardening process and all of these things. And just to let you know, I asked my children permission if I can tell this story, because it's pretty deep, and it's really, their heart is affected by this and their entire life for the rest of their life. One of the things that we did very early on in 2020 was we planted jalapenos, pumpkins, watermelon. We had these beautiful morning glories that they grow like crazy in the South Valley at our house. And one of the things was we planted the pumpkins from the seed, straight from a little package. And so they were able to see that. They were fascinated that we were able to grow a pumpkin. So they saw everything from beginning to the moment it was ready to be harvested. At the time of the pumpkin needing to be harvested, their biological mother passed away. So that became now another level of trauma that my children were going to have to go through. I never imagined that a pumpkin was going to be the tool that I was going to use to be able to help them navigate through this loss. And what that did for me was we were able to talk about how we planted the pumpkin, we saw it grow, and we didn't harvest that pumpkin because we went through everything and we kind of just forgot to go out there and do it because my children were grieving. One day we were outside and my youngest daughter noticed the pumpkin. And she said, "Oh, we forgot the pumpkin and the pumpkin is dead." And she related that to her mom because she was able to say, just like my mom died. And so we were able to go through the entire process of the life and death of the pumpkin and how the pumpkin is going to go back into the earth and it was going to nourish the soil and that we were going to be able to grow more. And that's kind of the process. Sorry, I'm still at school and the bell rang and you might be your children in the background. And so that was a way for us to show them how even though it was a loss, it's going to go back into the earth and provide other things for us. It nourishes the soil, it's compost, and it goes back to where we came. It goes back to where we came from, kind of like us. If you believe in that kind of way of thinking when it comes to life and death, we come from the earth, we go back to the earth in some way, shape, or form. So it was really interesting how that pumpkin helped us help our children to grieve and to understand life and death. And they knew that pumpkin was never going to come back, just like their mom, but that they will feel her in other ways through the earth and through the elements. So that was a really fascinating thing for us. And it really showed me how gardening will always be a tool that I use for my children, always and forever. And that I'm hoping what they get out of it is as they grow up, they're going to want to live in an environment where they're able to do that for themselves and hopefully maybe for other people. And I learned early on with this little meme here, this saying, when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. That's true for every single child that is in school, regardless of whether they have trauma or not, right? It's something that we really look at to help them be able to navigate through whatever type of issues they're going through. And especially with children who are suffering with social emotional issues, with any kind of trauma. It changes a perspective, it gives a perspective, and it can truly change a mindset, always for the positive and to heal and grow. So that's my little story about that.
Thank you, Anna, for your beautiful story. I really appreciate you sharing that with us. As Anna mentioned, the beautiful health benefits from being outside in nature, how it healed, and it still continues to heal her children. As many of you may know, that not only does being outside boost your immune system and your mood and reduces stress, but also with the different types of herbs that we can grow that help us with sleep and stress, anxiety, energy level. So being out in nature improves all aspects of your health. And one thing that's been researched and that's evidence-based is that with children who have ADHD, being outside helps them focus, which is phenomenal because it's so easy just to step outside and be in nature with kids who might be struggling. Another wonderful research that has come out is this forest bathing. How many of you heard of forest bathing, and how many of you do that? Just this very idea of going out into the forest and being around pine, birch, and oak trees, they give off this phytonicides, which helps the plant fight off bacteria and disease. And when people breathe in this phytonicide, that actually triggers something within our bodies that creates a chemical that actually helps us fight off different tumors and cancers and virus infected cells. So this work is being done in Japan right now. And I think that's actually where maybe forest bathing first started. So there's a lot of amazing research. And if we can just put also the additional resources that you can go and check out at this website as well. It has like tons of books, different types of research studies, articles, and journals that go over the type of benefits that you receive while being outside, even talking to your plants. When you talk to your plants, they respond to you. I grew some irises this year, and I have them right here by me so that I can always smile and smell them and just really enjoy having them around me instead of the majority of the day I'm inside, so I can't go outside and enjoy them. So I bring them inside, little cuttings. And I also wanted to share with you, this little guy in this picture is my son, Trey. This is when he was in elementary school. And these are some sunflowers that we grew in our garden. I'm so sorry, I forgot that I was doing this part too. So, social emotional learning. This definition is from Castle, and it is a process through which children and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills in order to understand and manage their emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, and establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. So, why are we making it a priority in our district? In 2011, a meta-analysis of 213 school-based universal social and emotional learning programs, which included 270,000, oops, somebody's trying to get it, 34 kindergartens through high school. That study found that students gained social emotional skills, improved their attitude and self of others and in the school. also improve the positive classroom behavior, and that 11%, there was an 11 percentile point gain on the standardized achievement tests. There's also reduced risk or failure for conduct problems and emotional stress. So here at the district, we are intentionally we intentionally are moving towards incorporating SEL, not only in and weaving it through our curriculum, but we're also trying to model it as we did today with faculty, or excuse me, teachers and administrators. We also want to focus on the fact that SEL also advances educational equity and excellence through authentic school family community partnerships to establish learning environments and experiences that feature trusting and collaborative relationships, rigorous and meaningful curriculum, instruction, and ongoing, oops, another note got lost. Oh, excuse me. Rigorous and meaningful curriculum and instruction and ongoing evaluation. So SEL can address various forms of inequity and empowers students and faculty and young people and adults to co-create thriving schools and contribute to safe, healthy, and just communities.
Okay.
Jeff, can you go back?
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to tell a little story about the benefits of SEL and how it worked for our school. So we had this really amazing Mateo Carrasco come out from SWAP, who was such a benefit to our school. And I'm going to call this student Little T. That's what we'll call him. And Ms. Reina, who I work with, she's gonna know exactly who I'm talking about when I talk about this student. And just to give you a little bit of a background, Little T came to us from Oklahoma. He didn't really do kindergarten, so we were trying to figure out where he needed to be. He had zero self-regulation skills. He was like Flash. So everywhere he went, when you said, okay, it's time to go to lunch, he literally would just run out the door and you couldn't even catch him. He was there before everybody. He literally couldn't walk anywhere. Everywhere it was, I run, I scream, I yell, I tell people off, I'm disrespectful. This was who he was. He came from a neglectful home life with mom, and dad brought him here as a single dad, and he was trying to get a job. They were homeless for a while. There was a lot of things that this kid was going through at a very young age. So when he came to us, it was constant chaos. Again, and I love how this just kind of became an organic thing, because Mateo was outside in the front of our buildings where we have the trees and some benches, and he was chucking corn. And Little T says, "What's that guy doing?" And I said, "Oh, well, he's peeling the husk off the corn." And very intuitively, Mateo says, "Hey, Miss Ana, does this little man need, some time away from everyone else, and maybe he needs to help me?" And I said, "Absolutely." Because quite honestly, all of us that dealt with Little T needed a break because he was exhausting. He was a lot of work. And his first year, almost full year, he was with me every day because he was just so dysregulated. It was really bad. And so I left him with Mateo, and I was very wary of it. I walked away and I would turn around and I'm like, okay, I believe in you, Travis, you're gonna do great, and instantly Travis had no issues. He wasn't running around. He wasn't over talking Mateo. He sat, he focused, and he started peeling the corn in the same way that Mateo was doing it. And I was in shock. It blew me away. And I said, God, I wish we had corn every day. You know, that was my first thought, was like, we just need to get bushels of corn and have them do this on a daily basis. But it let me know that that Mateo was going to be a tool, and that we were going to be able to use the garden, because we have a garden here, which Mateo just did so much beautiful work with it. We were going to be able to use the garden and Mateo as a tool to help these kids self-regulate and to help them learn so many other skills without them even knowing that they were self-regulating, and we were teaching them how to self-regulate. He never disrespected Mateo. He never argued with him. He never ran away from him. It was really mind-blowing to see what all of that did. Mateo took him to the garden, let him play in the dirt, you know, showed him what he was doing with everything else. And I feel, you know, there's not like data, or we can't be 100% on this, but I really feel that experience recalibrated a lot of little T's brain. And it helped him to grow and to reconnect things that were not connected that he needed in order for him to move forward with what we were trying to help him with. He's in 3rd grade now, and he has very little of those self-regulating issues. They're still there, and there's still some issues in the classroom, but it's nothing like it was before. And every year he got better, and every time Mateo had time, he took little T to do that. And what was even really more amazing was how Mateo even allowed for the custodians to have sort of a competition with the garden over the summer on who took care of it better. So I don't even think they knew they were going to fall in love with the garden the way the kids did, because Mateo eventually was able to have groups of kids. He basically adopted like a 3rd grade class that would come out with him, and they would help him with whatever the needs for the garden was. So I saw firsthand what gardening was able to do for a kid who had very, very bad self-regulating skills. He had none, 0. And it changed his life. And I don't think he can even to this day relate that, right? He doesn't know that that's what happened, but we saw that happen. It didn't make him 100% better, but it definitely recalibrated some things that needed to be done. And I was extremely grateful for that because we needed him to learn a lot more. So that was a fascinating thing. So I've seen it firsthand. And I can honestly say that anyone who wants to argue that, please come see me, because we could have a really nice debate about that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anna, for sharing. So we've talked about the definition of social emotional learning. We've talked about the benefits, and Anna so clearly showed those benefits with little T, right? And I just always like to remind everyone that we're working with that this work, we are in the business of saving children's lives, right? This work can save children's lives and put them on a new trajectory. And so just that little bit of time, that relationship building, that interest and focus with little T put him on a different path, right? And we know that the school to prison pipeline begins as early as age 5. And so if we can start dismantling in these spaces in innovative ways, we will have a much richer and fuller community. So with that, I kind of want to drill down a little bit more in our knowledge and go through the core competencies of social emotional learning. So these are really what is defined by Castle. And what we did was we wanted to crosswalk it with school gardens. And so how does this relate to our relationships with plants and what plants tell us? And so really thinking of social awareness to start with, right? So a kid that is well regulated and has a rich social emotional learning practice embedded through their lives, they're aware of their surroundings, right? They're aware of their relationships with other people. They're just socially aware of what's going on. We really connected this to the same way that plants grow, and they grow next to each other. And so thinking of companion planting, you know, we can plant certain plants next to each other and they're going to thrive and do beautifully. And those of us that are educators need to think of that even with our kiddos, right? I'm not going to put two kids that are always going to be in conflict with each other in the same group. I'm not going to set kids up for that and set them up for failure. And so the same way that we would think of our companion plants in our garden, I want you to be thinking of that as we are thinking of the students and even the staff that we work with, right? The next one is self-awareness. So kiddos that are well-regulated will have a good gauge on their own self-awareness. They're really aware of what they need. They're able to communicate when they need a break. It's almost the same way that plants are self-aware, right? Plants will let us know what they need. They're very aware of their surroundings. They have evolved in ways to protect themselves and to protect themselves from other predators, to protect themselves just in so many ways, right? We know this as gardeners. And so thinking about that connection between our own self-awareness, our students' self-awareness, and the way that plants have become self-aware. And then self-management. So really thinking of the ways in which kiddos are able to then manage their needs, right? How do students begin to ask and communicate, right? All behavior is a form of communication. Those of us in the Behavior Redirector program, Anna, you know that when little T was running or misbehaving, he was communicating needs, right? He needed to have relationships and he needed to have other things in place that supported him. And so really thinking of self-management with plants, plants will communicate their needs, right? I'm great in my garden. I'm not the best about my houseplants. And so my houseplants right now are telling me, oh dear Layla, please give us water and open the blinds, right? Our plants tell us what they need, right? They are communicating to us. And so kids, they might not have the language skills. And this goes for adults too, right? Because we're in a society where we're not the best at stating what our needs are. A lot of times we'll blow up or we'll get frustrated or we'll shut down. And so thinking through how can we build self-management skills into the work that we're doing, not only with our plants, but with our kiddos too. And then responsible decision-making, right? When we get kids involved in the garden, we are teaching them how to be responsible for living things, how to be responsible for watering and fertilizing and harvesting and watching things grow and teaching them patience. And then lastly, with relationship skills, we just always want to remind you that we are in relation with any sentient being. We are in relation with anything that metabolizes, right? And so plants are metabolizing, they're living beings. We're in relationship to them. They respond to us, right? And so the way in which we interact with the garden, you know, whether we're going out and we're singing in our garden, we're giving them oxygen, right? We're talking to our plants, we're bringing that good, healthy energy into those spaces. We need to be doing with each other, right? Because we are all a part of a larger community. Next slide.
Okay, so now we're going to do an SEL activity, which you can use with your students or children, and it's by steps, and you're going to need a piece of paper and something to draw on. So if you want to run and get a piece of paper, something to draw on, or something to draw with, something to draw on and something to draw with. And this activity is called the tree exercise. So does everybody have their materials? Can get a thumbs up. Yay. Awesome. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to fold our paper into 4 sections. And Layla, help me. How do we do this? Hamburger, something?
Hamburger and then hot dog, right? We're gonna do like a hamburger, fold it in half. And then you want to do like a hot dog and fold it lengthwise. And that way you'll have 4 quadrants. And then once you have your 4 quadrants, you can open it up.
Perfect. So step 2, in each one of these quadrants, you're going to draw just a tree trunk and branches, but with no leaves. So in each, so you should have 4 tree trunks with branches, no leaves yet. And give me a thumbs up when you got your tree trunks and branches. Layla's fast. Of course, she's done this. She's done this exercise so many times. It's always a fun one though, right? So now, step 3, you're going to finish the tree in each section to represent each of the 4 seasons. So however you see the 4 seasons, when you think about the trees, do each season, spring, summer, fall, and winter. And as you're finishing up your trees, write down next to the tree, what is it about that season that you like? And give me a thumbs up, either a virtual thumbs up or a real thumbs up when you're done with your each tree. Is everybody finished? Or close to it? As I continue, feel free to continue to draw, because I know I like to get real detailed, so feel free. It's a really great opportunity to be creative. So once you're done, look at each tree that you drew, and if you don't mind posting your thoughts in the chat, what are some things that you notice about the tree or your trees?
Is it okay if we unmute ourselves too if we don't want to type?
Oh, please do. Ooh,
I
Nisa,
noticed that the first one I drew was my summer tree because it's full of fruit and fullness, and that's my favorite season. So that's the one that I went to first in my quadrant.
So you drew your favorite tree, favorite season, and the best thing about that season in the tree. Awesome. I think Nisa said a sturdy trunk. Her tree has a sturdy trunk, which is awesome when there's a good wind like today. The tree changes so much during the, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, you can go ahead.
Oh, I was just trying to fill a space, which is not really a big mistake. I shouldn't do that. So no, Marisa, go ahead.
Sorry, my internet is like kind of going in and out, so I'm gonna do my best here. But I was just thinking about how, like as I was looking at the different quadrants of the tree, that it makes me think about kind of like how, you know, like the tree expends like energy during the spring and summer to like keep like leaves alive, and then during the winter it like saves energy within its roots. Uh-oh.
Is Marisa still there?
Oh yeah, can you hear me now?
Okay. Yes, yes, yes. I wasn't too sure if you were finished because I heard you go, uh-oh. So I was like, uh-oh, uh-oh.
Oh, sorry, my computer froze again and I was like, I don't even know if they can hear me. I think I'm gonna try switching to my phone. It must just not be working properly. But what I was saying was, yeah, the tree uses energy to keep leaves and fruit alive during spring and summer, and then draws its like, you know, life force inwards to keep its roots alive. And I feel similarly where I have a little bit less energy to like, you know, give to others or to do like, you know, external things. I'm a lot more like, you know, introverted, and I reflect inwards a lot more during like the winter time, and then in like the spring and summer I usually have a little bit more energy to, you know, give to others.
Thank you, Marisa. That was awesome. I mean, we have a few more questions here. If you would want to respond to anything, think about yourself, like Marisa said, in the different ways throughout the year. Are you a stable presence? What is a part of you that is always there, observing and experiencing and changing the weather?
Can I chime in?
Is this Jamie?
Yes.
Jaime? Okay, yeah, sure, please.
Okay, so I in the digital innovators program, we did a similar exercise. It was a little bit different. It was the like, what does this reflect about your personality? Like how you drew the tree, not the 4 different ones, although I love the seasonality. I just appreciating, similar to what Nisa had said about the sturdy trunk being comforting, how I don't know, I guess that constant is always there, like, even through all the changes, like the core of who we are is there. And of course that changes over time too, but yeah, I don't know. Some of the things I really loved are like the themes around different types of energy. So yeah.
Thank you for that. And that's really a part of the SEL that is so important, that no matter what's going on with the leaves, the tree is always the same person. And that's the same thing with emotions. So when students, like little T, when I was talking about little T, and when he was doing things that were a little bit challenging, that he's a beautiful person. It's just that sometimes the things that he thinks about are like the leaves. They come and they go, and that it's not what defines him as that beautiful young little person that's trying to learn. So thank you for your comments in the chat. I love the cycles of energy. Jeff says, I notice that each season has different emotions. I love fall most of all, but each season has its qualities and challenges. And Michelle has the tree is more filled out in the summer and kind of thin other times of the year. And then Layla dropped something in chat as well she wants to explain.
If I can unmute myself, yeah, I just dropped in a PDF copy if any of you want this presentation. That way you can just download it. This is a great exercise to use with anyone that you work with. So we invite you to take any of our materials and use them in any way you see fit.
Thanks, Leila. Thank you for participating. That was fun.
I was just going to say real quick, my name is Reina Luz Juarez. I'm the community school coordinator at Whittier and super fan of Miss Ana Flores because she's the bomb diggity. And I drew my trees. I was going to say I just love trees. Trees, like the way we have spirit animals and that kind of thing. I think trees are like my spirit nature. And just because they're a constant. They change with the seasons and they have their purposes, but to me, I feel like they're always a constant. And that's what I love about my house is I have this big, huge tree out front and it makes me feel safe. I love trees. And we were part of a tree planting thing. And Whittier was just, I don't know, we're doing all kinds of cool stuff. So thank you very much for this space.
Thank you, Reina. And thank you for showing your trees. If anybody feels like they like to do that too, I like to show off my artistic talents. You want to show off your trees.
I wanted to say something real quick that what the seasons do for me is it allows me to deal with my ups and downs that I have with life. And it makes me connect because I know that I really miss the summers when, you know, it starts getting cooler. And so the fall comes around, which is probably next to summer, my favorite, because everything continues to be beautiful, right? But it's different shades. And then once winter comes, maybe because now I'm a mama bear, all I want to do is hibernate, right? And so it really throws me into not necessarily a depression, but I feel like I need to go into this hibernation mode because the soil, I think what's in the soil is hibernating and the trees are like hibernating. And so it's interesting how winter does that for me. And once spring starts coming around, I feel like I'm reborn and I'm starting all over again. And it's like my new year. So that's how I see the seasons like that. So spring to fall is like my favorite. And then after that, you know, I have issues with it. So, but that's just, you know, my personal issue. And I wanted to read something to you really quickly since we're on this tree thing. I have a Facebook friend named Adriana Villar, and some of you may even know who she is. And the day that it was really, really windy, she says, some people in New Mexico right now, I hate this wind, can't sleep, messes up my hair. And this is what nature is saying back. Sounds like a personal problem to me. I'm just cleansing the atmosphere and spreading pollen and seeds that help keep this planet habitable for your whiny, ungrateful asses. You're welcome. Now shut up and go to sleep. And I just thought that was one of the most beautiful Facebook posts I've ever seen. And I was very grateful for that because it's so true. You know, stop the whining and let nature do what it has to do.
Yeah, that's perfect because that's actually, you know, kind of one of the metaphors that I use sometimes working with well, with children too, but I do a lot of work with adults and kind of rethinking community collaborative behaviors, right? And so even the wind is a metaphor for, you know, it has its purpose, exactly that, right? To move things around. And then the rain comes and then the rain waters those things and settles the ground, and then the sun comes out, and you know, so it's like it all has that purpose. And so I kind of share that when we're in settings with the diverse groups of people and facilitating meetings with people that have very diverse personalities is really explaining, hey, we all have purpose. And so this person may have a really fiery personality, and and that'll give a certain kind of energy to the group. And you may have some people that are just more reserved and quiet and thoughtful, and that's purpose as well. And having that combination of all those purposes is what supports that kind of ecosystem and supports work in that kind of a way too. So even though it may feel tumultuous and like it's messing up our hair and oof, driving us crazy, it serves purpose. So we all serve purpose.
And by the way, Jaime, I love what you wrote on about rest, that our society doesn't honor the rest cycle that we all need. School systems are especially guilty of that. It's very true.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and move into restorative practices.
Is that me? So yes, we're gonna link this together to restorative practices because, well, one, like I'm a one-trick pony, so I think of everything as connecting to restorative practices. But I see the garden, and particularly gardens within schools, excuse me, as inextricably connected to restorative practices, and even sort of an arm or a branch of restorative practices within a school. And so I want to say a little bit about it here, but I'm also aware that I want to make sure that we get time to maybe even practice a circle, or at least go through a circle. And so I'll do a little bit of conversation here now, but basically what we are trying to do within our schools right now is build up the idea that relationships are kind of key, and that relationships, not just for the sake of relationships, but relationships that are built on respect and that built on kind of the 5 R's of restorative practices. So we'll talk a little bit about what those are. So the 5 R's of restorative practices, and Layla and I do this on a pretty regular basis. So feel free, Layla, to chime in and offer your ideas, because I love the idea of how SEL competencies connect into like growing. And I think it can happen as well with restorative practices, but there's 5 R's. And if it's just a way to frame how we understand and how we interpret restorative practices within our own schools. And so take with it what you want. But the first is relationships and respect. And I've been told that one is more important than the other sometimes. And I'm always depending on how I'm feeling, I feel like relationships are sometimes more important than respect, but it's sort of like you can't have one without the other. So let's just start with relationships, as we are in relationship all the time. And it is really easy at our schools when we are adults working with kids to see us how we're in relationship with each other, but we forget that we're in relationship to all the other people and places that are connected to that place. So the schools are definitely an anchor within our neighborhoods and our communities. Everybody knows them. We all know, like, I live in between Kirkland and Bandelier Elementary School, and everybody in our neighborhood knows these schools. And we go and walk out in the park in Bandelier, and we have to watch out for dog poop because everybody takes their dog out there. And so it's closed off, and it was a big deal, and we were all mad. Anyway, that means that school's in relationship with all of those people. And that relationship is good and bad. There's things that happen within that, but there's also opportunity. So respect is the other one. And respect is this kind of notion that we are in restorative practices, we give respect no matter what, that it's there. It's sort of a given. I'm going to give you respect. And Raina, I loved your sort of idea of like, we all have these different sort of personalities and things. I am not always that open-minded. And so that's a good challenge to me to be like, yep, sometimes I'm going to meet those challenging people and they don't quite work well with me. And they don't understand how amazing I am. So I've got to teach them how amazing. So anyway, we've got to understand that respect is something we give no matter what. Even if I'm not getting respect back from you, I'm still going to give respect, and I'm going to demonstrate respect. We show a video of one teacher, one principal at a school who says, if I have a kid yelling me in the hallway, I'm going to teach them that yelling is not right, or that how we're going to talk to each other, but I'm not going to yell back at you to not yell at me, right? So it's that idea of teaching respect. And then we move into repair and responsibility. Repair would be connected to responsibility in that we are teaching how to repair when we've done harm. And we're always sort of doing harm in various ways, either intentionally or unintentionally. And that means we always have the opportunity to take responsibility and show how we can be responsible for the repair of the harm that we've caused. And sometimes we need to be taught that as well, because we're not taught, we don't always demonstrate that well as adults, that we take responsibility for our actions and that we're willing to repair those harms. And some days I'm amazing with this, and other days I am doing everything I can to avoid it. And so we work a lot with schools that are trying really hard to have conversations, and sometimes people are ready and sometimes they're not. So repair and responsibility are things that we teach. And then we teach reintegration as well. And reintegration is this notion that people are coming and going throughout our community, and we do well to sort of pause whenever folks do rejoin that community and just acknowledge it. And in whatever way, either they come in back to your classroom, or they're coming back to be a new teacher, or they're coming back to be a family person that comes in and supports the school. All of these are important parts of our school systems and our ecosystems at the school, and we do well to kind of acknowledge that. Is there anything you want to add to that, Layla?
Yeah, I just think it's so important to really highlight too that, restorative practices is a paradigm shift in what we do and the way that we handle things that happen in our schools or in our daily lives. And so the practices are really about how do we build relationships, and then when things do go wrong, because inevitably things will go wrong, and that's okay, we can accept that. It's how do we repair that, right? What do we make as part of our culture to repair harm and to turn it into those teaching moments, right? And I really like to frame it in, a lot of times it's teaching moments for our adults, right? Raina, you had talked about, working with adults, and so many of us, that is our work, right? We're in relation with our colleagues in the spaces in which we work. And so how do we not only build relationships and community with each other, but how do we repair things and be able to be vulnerable in our leadership to say, like, oh, I messed up, and this is what I'm thinking about to make this right. Is that okay? Can I make this right? Right? And being vulnerable enough. And it will feel strange, but when it becomes your practices and a part of the culture and how you interact with the world, it really does become just natural, and it becomes the expectation. And I often say, so often the kids are easy, they're ready, right? They really want to engage in this work, they want to do this. And sometimes it's a little bit harder for our adults to engage in this work. And so I do always, everyone thinks like it's a curriculum and it's a set of, come in, Layla, Jeff, Michelle, with your magic wand. I'm sure Anna is the behavior redirector. It's like, where's your magic wand? Make this kid better, right? Zippity doo dah, right? Everything's perfect. And that's just not how it works. It really is about how we shift our culture, right? And how do we take that critical lens? And I also just really like to remind everyone that we don't own restorative practices, that these are borrowed practices from Indigenous communities. And I do just want to make space to honor that and to honor the land in which we sit upon, and just do a land acknowledgement, and also a practice acknowledgement that these have been a part of communities for centuries. And while it has become a buzzword in the past couple of decades, it is really important for us to recognize the roots of this work. Anything else on that? And feel free to unmute and say anything.
Do you mind if I say something? And, I'm a parent, so this will happen, but my daughter goes to an APS school, and it was her, anyways, her teacher kept her after class yesterday and dressed her down. in a way that we don't do anymore to children. Called her names. Terrible. But I'll tell you something, the principal called me this morning and she said, we don't do this in APS. We honor SEL and APS. And she apologized to me. And I have to say, I was just kind of blown away because I've worked with children in schools for 20 years, and there was a long time where that kind of way we treated children was acceptable. And I can see in my career the culture shift, and that I had a principal call me and say, you know, that's just not what we do anymore. And I want to apologize to you, and your daughter's needs weren't met. Her developmentally appropriate needs were not met. And I just thought, wow, like the world's coming along. The world, and it really put down my defenses, you know. And so I just want to say that the work you're doing is obviously making it out to the schools, but more than that, it's honoring children, and I really respect that. So.
Absolutely, and thank you, Nika, so much for sharing that. And if you'd like any further resources or consultation with our team, and this goes for anyone. I know we have a short amount of time today and there's so much to share, and so I'll drop in other resources as well. But if there's any way that you would like to engage in a conversation further with the school, we'd be more than willing to facilitate that for you.
So as we're talking about school culture and some of the things that are shifting, one of the things that we are trying to train in whatever capacity we can or in whatever areas we can is the idea of building those relationships in very intentional ways. I do a lot of trainings in schools, and I still feel like we all have a lot from high school and below to learn from some of those earlier grades from kindergarten and first grade, where like we take the time to sit in a circle and like talk about the lesson, go through the day and model the behavior that we're expecting, not just sort of teach it and talk about it, but like actually demonstrate it in our ways. So one thing we're doing is teaching connection circles in ways that people can sit in a circle within your own classroom to discuss topics, to do lessons, to talk about when things aren't working well. We've done a couple processing on like, what is it like to be back now? And like, this is weird and this feels weird and that's okay, but we're also really excited about being back. So we've got to balance all of that. So connection circles is a particular model within restorative practices that we teach how to do those sorts of things. But again, these are not things that are sort of owned exclusively by us, but we find this to be helpful, and we want to sort of integrate that into what we're talking about today, and how working in the garden, working with students in your schools, having circles as part of that, or having a circle before you go into it, before you go out into the garden and you do your garden time, or if you have other activities or things that you're doing, can the garden be incorporated into that? But more and more, it's about having a space that's intentional and about having a conversation that's intentional. So I don't want to belabor it because I do want to talk a little bit more about where we want to move next, and that's kind of doing a little bit of processing about circles. So I am moving fast on it, but Layla, is there anything else that you want to make sure? Okay. So one of the ways that we start a circle is, you know, we want to make it as least complicated as possible, but as intentional as possible. And so those are often in conflict with each other. So we offer these suggested guidelines for schools, not as a way to police the conversation, but as a way to invite folks into a very intentional conversation in an intentional space. So when we have a circle, typically we have one or maybe two facilitators who start the circle and who have the questions, who start with an opening, have an opening thought or an opening reading or a focus. And then we go through the guidelines for that, for our circle. So I'll just read these very quickly, and then we'll move on to what we're talking about here. So the guidelines are that we're going to speak openly and honestly, and we're going to speak from the heart. We're going to use school appropriate language, and we're going to respect people's privacy. And the one I like to focus just a little bit on privacy, because I've been in lots of circles and lots of classrooms, and the circle is only as strong as that confidentiality, as that respecting people's privacy can be held. And so that is something that we have seen from the high school level to the middle school level to the elementary school, that kids are really there and can honor that and can respect people's privacy really, really well when you make that intentional. But you just have to speak it and let them know that that's part of the guidelines. We have a talking piece, which is a little odd right now in the world of COVID. So right now what we've seen are people just do kind of a fist bump to the next person as a talking piece, or do something and like hand something imaginary, but do something that just sort of regulates that conversation. What I love about a talking piece is that it honors the person who has it, because they're the one who gets to talk. And then you get to honor that person by listening to them. Just like when somebody else has the talking piece, you're honoring them with listening as well. We're trying to limit the crosstalk, verbal or nonverbal. We're trying to limit those sighs and guffaws and laughs and things that happen when people share. Because not everybody's saying something funny, even though it sounds funny to you. So just let them say what they have to say, and then move on. We're always going to let you pass. You can always pass, and we'll always come back to you. And then the last one is really just share the time fairly. So those are our suggested guidelines. It's often fun when you have a class to let them come up with the guidelines as well. So be creative. So we can talk a little bit about some of the circles that we've seen in classrooms, and I would welcome Anna and Michelle and Layla to sort of respond with any ideas or thoughts that you had on circles that you have seen in classrooms. But we do a lot of this within our own schools in APS. And Nisa, it's awesome that you're actually seeing maybe a shift in culture and some of that happening. We are totally not taking any credit for it, but we're just going to say maybe we're just part of the water that's happening. And so that's really encouraging to hear from our end, because that reflects to us a restorative mindset of like, yep, I did wrong, I need to repair this. And simple as that. Nobody's ego is hurt. Nobody's ego needs to be repaired. It's just sort of like, yep, that didn't work well. So, but in our, particularly with circles, we have lots of varieties of where they can happen, from celebration circles at the end of the week to opening circles for the beginning of the school year to daily circles where we do a quick check-in. I've seen 8th grade classrooms where they did a 5-minute check-in, weather check, how are we doing, where are you at, just so the teacher could get a sense of where the classrooms are at. And bereavement circles, responding to community trauma circles, lots and lots of ideas here. So anybody else here that wants to share like any other ideas or thoughts they have on circles that would be appropriate within our schools?
Did you say we're going to practice one here? We're going
to try. We are running out of time, which is sort of, yeah.
We
may well just
be the late group to come back into the closing session.
Okay, well, I'll move on just for the sake of getting to that part. But when we're teaching circles and integrating it, and I mean, just what we're hoping to see with this or sort of prompt is that it's likely that whenever if you're in a classroom or if you're in a school and you have a garden within the school and you're going out to teach them, that doing a circle within that seems extraordinarily appropriate and can even be a model for teaching them about the specific thing you're trying to do that day. But I would love for teachers, for admin, for deans, for other people within a school to sort of see the garden as a space to kind of go out and do these circles, so that it's not just in a classroom, it's not just confined to walls, that you can sort of see and be and feel as well. But these are things that we do that build relationships over time. And we need to emphasize over and over again that these are not things that happen overnight. You don't teach a connection circle and then a week later, you've just got amazing connections with your kids. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of routine and ritual and practice with these. So just be patient with it, let it happen. And the kids will let you know when they're sort of at a space to go further, or maybe just sort of stay where they're at. So this is the part where we're going to practice a connection circle. So we don't have a lot of time, and I apologize that that I've sort of talked on too long here. But I wanted to prompt you with a question, and as much as we can, we'll try to go through sort of a quick check-in circle on this question itself. But our prompt really is for today, our disconnection with our minds, and that's sort of in recognition that a lot of our time that we spend is done sort of in autopilot. I was driving today from work, pick up kids, come back home. I wasn't really thinking about my space. All I was thinking was about the wind. And thank you for the reminder that maybe, Anna, maybe I need to rethink the wind and not just sort of, I'm still going to be disconcerted about it, but I'm going to think about it differently. So I appreciate that. But so anyway, our disconnection with our minds is emblematic of our disconnection with the earth. And gardening is one way to ground ourselves and be mindful of our connection to the world and to each other. So the question is, how does that look for you in your context? So I know that's a complicated question. I know that's a sort of a multi-tiered one, but basically, what does grounding yourself in the garden look like to you in whatever context you're in, whether that be at home or at work or school or in the community or wherever? So I'm going to read the question again, and then we can go around and do sort of a short connection circle. If we don't have time, please put your thoughts in the chat, and then we can at least have that as a thing we can connect with. So our disconnection with our minds, most of the time we are functioning on autopilot, is emblematic of our disconnection with the earth. Gardening is one way to ground ourselves and be mindful of our connection to the world and to each other. So how does that look for you and your context? So I will, typically when we do these circles, and then I would just ask, I can't look at the chat while I'm doing this. So if somebody wants to be mindful of the chat that's going on. So in my box, Anna, you're first, and then Layla, you go next. So we'll start with Anna and then move over to Layla, and then Nisa, you're after Layla.
So for me, it's definitely a way to connect much deeper to our earth and where we belong, how we belong, and it allows me to be more respectful of life and of my own life as well. And I see it as a place, another place for me to be able to nurture, because I really feed off of that. I think I was just born to be a nurturer, and so it allows me to fulfill that need that I have. And gardening is definitely the way that has helped me with that for a long time.
Go to Layla and then Nisa after that.
So for me, really connecting with gardening and connecting to the earth is really, it helps me with all of those social emotional competencies that we covered, right? And so I really struggle with patience and slowing down. I've always kept myself really, really busy, and it really helps me to slow down and think through processes and know that to have something beautiful takes planning and time. And I also just find it really healing to get out there and get my hands in the dirt and get some of those nutrients pumping through my skin and through my veins and getting sunshine. So those are the ways that I connect.
And then Layla, if you want to read the chats as they're coming in too, that'd be great. But let's go to Nisa next.
So in all my years working with kids, one of the things I've realized is I really love to listen to children. I love the way they use words. I love the things they have to say. I love the way that each child moves their body when they speak. You know, they're just these little amazing beings. And I love being able to steal aside in the garden with a child and just have a conversation that you wouldn't normally have. You know, that little digging side by side, you're digging and there's no phone and there's no nothing. And there's no, you know, maybe the other kids are busy and you sneak aside and you have just that one-on-one conversation with an individual child. And for me, I just love that.
I have Michelle and then Kateri.
For me, being in the garden just really helps me with being grateful. I'm always grateful when I get to be outside and put my feet in the dirt.
So Kateri, and then I think we have Raina after that.
Thank you. Thank you for this beautiful session. Gardening has brought so much purpose to my life. It's allowed me to look beyond myself, and it's challenging. It's not, it's not always easy, especially when you're gardening at a school. I go and work at Wilson Middle School sometimes in the garden, and some days it's really hard. You're just out there and like you're having the same day the students are having, and or like even in my own yard, some days I'm like, gosh, there's so much to do. Or you're at the farm, and there's all this to do, and it can feel really challenging, and to face that, I feel like makes me a lot stronger. I've seen it make students stronger, so yeah, super grateful.
So Verena and then Marisa after that.
So I'll try and be quick. So my family is farmers up north in Chimayo, New Mexico. So in that way, I have a relationship to farming and the land, just as life and just our own sovereignty there in our community. Here in the school and in the city, I think Anna had said something that really struck me. Of all of this work as a community school coordinator, finding the money, all of everything for foundational work so that people can thrive and do the other stuff in the garden, is very satisfying to me, because even though I'm not out there in the garden, I know I helped to bring those resources to our school, and that makes me feel good, like I've helped something, right? But the piece about our custodians, and sometimes in schools and in community gardening, I've had a lot of experience where people are like, you're just creating more work for me. But the ownership and just the pride that has developed amongst these super macho cholo guys who are like, I ain't doing that, and you're not gonna make me do more work. I already clean and dig dirt. They've really, that's their thing, and they've, just that sense of ownership. So as a community organizer, I think gardening and creating opportunities, as challenging as they are to do collaborative work around garden space, is an incredible opportunity for building contextual relationships, right? And can be used in so many different contexts. But I appreciate that Anna lifted that up, because I think that's been the brightest spot in all of this for me in this last 3 years, watching Luciano. We had a little rogue tomato plant that was growing out of the cement outside of our cafeteria, and people became very protective of it. And then Luciano, the custodian, would even set up a mirror to make sure that the sun was shining on it, because it was in kind of a shady space. And so it was a real, that real ownership of this is our land and our community to protect.
Thank you. So I have Marisa next, and then Barbara, we'll go to you.
Thank you, everybody, for sharing. It's been so lovely to hear everybody's reflections. I think for me, especially this year, I've had a really wonderful opportunity to work a little bit more closely with like the farming community here. So especially when I get to be on the farm in particular, it feels like community. It feels like reconnecting to my ancestral roots, getting back to like how some of my family used to be farmers, and tending to the land, and just to be in a space to like learn from elders, to learn from others that have such a beautiful relationship with the earth, and even just reconnecting back with the earth, like we are of the earth is of us. So just having that, it's like basically like a spiritual experience or just a spiritual way of being, really. So yeah, thank you.
We'll go to Barbara and then Jamie.
So my dog knew that I was going to talk, so he started barking. It happens every time. Sorry about that. There are so many like deep, really profound things about the garden, but just on the most superficial level, for children to be able to work with their hands and see something tangible and see the results of something that they've done tangibly and that they can connect with, I think is so powerful, because we've taken so many of those things away from inside the classroom that it's really important for children to see that they can actually interact with the real world. And the garden is certainly the best place for that.
So do Jamie and then Jessica.
Well, I shared in the chat just that tending to other life outside of myself, it kind of goes back to that energy piece where I'm giving my energy to, like, when I'm hauling gallons of hand watering blackberries around the buildings around campus, I'm putting my energy into those organisms in that life, and then those blackberries, for example, in turn come back and give me life, and just obviously in food, but in caring for one another. So a recycling of energy, recirculating back and forth between me and the plant community at school or whatever garden.
Jessica, I see you posted in there if there's anything more you want to say.
No, I think basically what I posted, and just kind of realizing, after listening to everyone talk, that it's made me realize that my 20-year career working with children has been entirely in the field of outdoor education. And I think it's kind of coming around for me now, realizing, oh, I think this is why I was drawn to outdoor education in the first place, is that connection for myself, that connecting with nature and the outdoors makes, and also having seen how that connection manifests for children as well, but never had that language for it in the beginning. It was always just a feeling and observation. Anyway, that's all. Thank you.
So we have Michelle and then Deborah next, and we are running down to the last minute or two, but I do want to make sure we have time for everybody to share. So Michelle or Deborah, if you want to share.
I'm not sure if it's me, Michelle. I don't have a camera on this computer.
It is you, yes, you are the middle.
Yeah, just I think witnessing growth and teaching patience that was mentioned earlier is definitely that lesson from the garden and lesson for working with students and I'm a counselor, so I'm always rooting for growth.
Sorry, Deborah, we're just reflecting on sort of the role of gardens, and the question is very much a simple, our disconnection with our minds is emblematic of our disconnection with the earth. And what is it? Gardening is one way that we ground ourselves and be mindful of our connection to the world and to each other. And how does that look for you in your context? So that's the question. If you are so inspired, you are welcome to answer or not. All right. Well, we don't have time for questions. We're past our time. So I will just sort of say thank you very much, everybody, for what you shared, for the time and the space that you gave us. Any closing thoughts, Layla, Anna, or Michelle?
No, just thank you for having us here. We're really excited to share this work, and it really does connect with everything that we do with schools and in our lives. And so please take this and utilize it in the work that you do within this community. If you need anything, I'm always willing to reach out and talk to you. So please email, call. I could drop my email in the chat.
Same.
All right. Michelle, anything?
Put it in the chat.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everybody. So yes, there is the closing back with Kateri at the end here if you want to go back to that room. And that's starting right now and go till about 5:30. But apparently there's prizes. So I know that's the only reason I'm going to go over. Just thanks, everybody. Thanks, folks.
Everyone.